A basketball hero around here is treated like a god. I mean, how can you ever find out what he could really do? I don't want this to be the high point of his life. I've seen them, the real sad ones. They sit around the rest of their lives talking about the glory days when they were 17 years old.
You know, most people would kill to be treated like a god just for a few moments.
Welcome to the Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. I'm your host, Billy Powell. If you're listening to this, you're probably listening to this on Spreaker.com. You can also go to Spreaker.com/KTNA to find our library of shows, and we have another place where you can listen to our library of over 100 interviews, and that's at keepingthenostalgiaalive.podbean.com. Back in 1985, our athletic director at Broad Ripple High School had a couple extra tickets to the Indiana High School Basketball State Championship down at Market Square Arena. And, you know, as a high school basketball player, when you get beat in the state tournament, you really don't care about watching someone else play because you're so kind of a little bit down and depressed because you've lost and you're not there. But I decided to take him up on his offer and go down to Market Square Arena, and the gentleman that we're going to have on our show today was in that Final Four. Actually, he went to back-to-back Final Fours. He was an all-state selection in football for Southridge, and he was also an all-state selection in basketball at Southridge, and also played football at Indiana State University. And my guest today is Todd Jochem. Todd, thanks for taking some time from your coaching schedule to help keep the nostalgia alive and talk about your memories of athletics, Indiana State, and high school basketball.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Todd, tell us a little bit about where you're from and your family and who introduced you to athletics.
So I'm from Huntingburg, Indiana, born there, raised there. Kind of grew up in the time when my friends and I would spend the summers outside on our bikes, going from house to house, playing baseball, basketball, football out in the fields. You know, I don't know if there was one person that introduced me to athletics, more the whole community did. Particularly in Huntingburg, you know, for probably 70 years now, they've had a very fond appreciation of high school basketball, you know, beginning in the 50s when they built a gym that seated more than the number of people in the town. So, you know, the community embraced sports, and, you know, I was fortunate enough to be able to do some stuff there, and it just snowballed.
What was your first sport what sport did you love initially? Was it football, was it basketball, or was it even baseball?
Well, back then, Little League Baseball was really the first sport you could play, probably alongside basketball, maybe in third or fourth grade. One of my biggest, earliest memories, though, in basketball was we had a pretty good team all the way through, but when we were, I don't know, fourth or fifth graders, our toughest competition were the elementary school from, I guess, St. Anthony, that had 3 or 4 girls on it. And I remember playing, and those girls would like whip their heads around and hit us with their ponytails and stuff. And I believe those girls ended up going to the state championship a couple years at Forest Park down the line. So that's sort of some of the early memories there. Certainly basketball was always the most popular, I think, in my mind, and what I loved to play. It turned out later on, I guess, my size and stuff made football a more realistic sport to play at a higher level. But, you know, early on it was hoops, and that still continues now.
Did you have a favorite college or a favorite pro team that you liked to follow when you were a youngster in basketball?
Indiana Hoosiers. Bob Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers, no doubt.
How about football?
I mean, I remember going to Indiana football games, and you know, they were sort of like they are now. And certainly Notre Dame was a big deal because they were on TV more. And I, you know, the Colts coming to Indianapolis, I guess, in the early 80s was a big memory for me as well.
Yeah, the Indianapolis Colts coming in the Mayflower moving vans in 1984, right?
Exactly.
So you said a lot of you guys played together. You know, the AAU really wasn't, like it is today. So, I mean, how did you keep yourself in shape? Did you guys play? Where'd you guys play in the off season? Did you have a hoop at the house? Did you have a place that you guys would get together and play the game?
So yes and no. So the first thing is, back in that day, you ended basketball, you played baseball. Baseball ended, you took some time off in the summer, you did a little football lifting, but then you played football. So we were always doing something. There was not really anything as sports specialization back then. With that being said, I do remember from probably about our freshman year on, Coach Duncan would have open gyms in the summertime, twice a week. We'd come and we'd play. Some of the most memorable things about that, though, that I think really helped us is Southridge had a great tradition of players that had graduated coming back and scrimmaging against the kids who were still in high school. So, I definitely remember scrimmaging against kids like Jeff Cochran and Jeff Williams and some of those guys that in the summertime that really, really helped us, get better quicker.
So you played ball, and so you knew Coach Duncan before you got to high school.
Pretty much everyone in the town knew Coach Duncan. He did some great things before we got to high school. He's the greatest coach I've ever been around in my life. I've been around a lot of great ones. So I think coming in as a freshman, we were in awe of Coach Duncan.
So once you get into high school, I guess you played football as a freshman, right?
I played JV as a freshman. Yeah.
And
JV football.
And what was high school football like at that point in time in the state of Indiana?
So interestingly, my freshman year, Bob Hawkins was the coach, and he took that team to the state championship game. I don't know exactly remember who they played, but the Southridge football had turned around. I played a few JV games. I ended up breaking my pinky and couldn't play after that. But football certainly was becoming more popular, but really still wasn't on par with basketball. Coach Hawkins had sort of reinvigorated at Southridge, and he was running a veer offense then that some of the college teams had been running. So it was becoming more popular, particularly with the run to the state championship, but basketball was still king.
Was that a cluster system also? I'm pretty sure it was, but wasn't it set up with clusters at that time?
In football, yes, I believe so. I recall, and I don't remember who we played that freshman year, but after that and before that, I always recall Evansville Mater Dei sort of being either in our cluster or who we had to play, and that was always a tough game for us.
What position did you most play in high school in football? Was it quarterback at most of the time, or did you play both sides of the field?
So first game of sophomore year, second game, I think I played free safety. And then from about the third game of my sophomore year on, I only played quarterback, no defense.
Did you have a quarterback when you were a kid or when you were in high school that you kind of liked to emulate or was your favorite?
Dan Marino, 100%. Yep.
So
I wore his number.
You're good.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. You wore his number.
Yeah, wore his number, liked his release. Coincidentally, he played here at Pitt, where I live now. But he also played for the Miami Dolphins, which more or less were my favorite team till the Colts came in town. So I grew up loving the Colts. Bob Greasy from Evansville, and then Marino ended up with the Dolphins as well. So it just was natural.
You don't see a lot of kids today concentrate. That most of them just concentrate on one sport. What was it like to go from football right into basketball?
It was hard because we were so out of shape. Particularly as a quarterback, and I didn't play any defense, there wasn't a whole lot of conditioning I did day to day during practice in football. That ended. You go to basketball, and immediately the first thing you're doing is running, and you're running the steps at the big gym, and that was not a lot of fun. You were sore for quite a long time.
Tell us your introduction to Coach Duncan. I mean, what was your first experience, or what were some of your first practices like with Coach Duncan?
So thinking back, the first time that with any significant interactions was early in our freshman year, where many of us, I think probably 3 or 4 of us, were called up to the JV team, And, he and Coach Ransom, who was his assistant at the time, essentially said, look, guys, we're kind of taking a risk here. We're bringing you guys up. We're going to play all of you on JV. It's going to be hard, but we think it's the best thing in the long run. And, Coach Duncan had to, we had to win games that year. That was 83. We ended up winning the sectional, I believe, that year. And he was busy with the varsity. And, Coach Ransom really took us and started molding us and getting us in the position to succeed as the JV, scrimmaging against the varsity and those guys, and really getting us ready to play the next year. But it was evident, from that first practice that, Coach Duncan was a fiery guy. He believed in excellence, and, he held all of us to a pretty high standard. So I think that freshman year, all of us sort of kept our mouth shut and played as hard as we could. And then, the relationships developed after that.
So at the beginning of your junior year, did you realize that you guys had something special? Did you kind of have an idea, or was it a surprise on how successful you guys were your junior year?
Well, it's funny you bring that up. The beginning of our junior year, we lost our first 2 games. I believe it was to, I don't even remember, maybe Pike Central or somebody, but we lost our first 2 games, didn't play well, and the second loss was the first game of our own holiday tourney, and that was a Friday night. And Saturday morning, Coach Duncan called myself and Ron Steinhardt into the coach's office at Memorial Gym and said, hey, guys, this isn't how it happened. We need some more leadership. We need, you got to play harder. We got to do what we're used to doing. And we got better. We improved to, I think, 5-3 at the Christmas break. And in those days, what Coach Duncan ended up doing was every Friday and Saturday in January, we played back-to-back games. And it turned out over Christmas break, I think we got a lot of stuff done and we improved, and we just went on a roll that January and February and just started playing together as a team. And, at that point, our goal was to win a sectional. All right. You got to remember, Southridge had never been, or in our memories anyway, had never been past the regional first game. So winning the Southridge sectional was an incredibly big deal. And, we went out, we did that, we got to the regional, and you could just see things gelling. I mean, we were playing as a team. We were sort of on fire shooting. I think we shot over 60% in 3 or 4 or 5 straight games. Ended up winning the regional over I think a Washington Catholic team that year, or maybe I forget all the teams. But ended up down at Evansville playing Austin in the first round, which, we thought we would compete well against. But we knew L&M was looming in that afternoon game. And kind of to turn back time a little bit, in that December time frame, Coach Duncan had taken all of us to Washington to watch L&M play Washington Catholic. And, we had watched these guys. We knew that Oliphant was going to go to IU and Patterson was going to go to, I think he ended up at Purdue. And, here we are 2.5 months later, we're playing these guys at Roberts Stadium, on TV to go to the state championship game, or the state finals, Final Four in Indiana. And, we just played our game. I think they were a little bit tired from having to play against Bossy in the afternoon. But we played our game. Ron Stein had a severely twisted ankle that he played on and played great on. We played great defense. Andy had a great game against Oliphant. I think we shot the ball well again. And basically, starting out the season 0-2, we just built confidence in the team, played as a team, and we believed in ourselves that game, and it showed. So early on, no, I didn't have any thought whatsoever we'd make it to the state finals. But as that year went on, it just became, I don't want to say destiny, but we did the right things and played as a team and made it happen.
You know, I would always get the newspaper, and I was pretty much on top of what was going on in the Indiana high school basketball scene. And were you the same way? Did you know what Marion was all about before you actually even got did you kind of follow the season and how teams were progressing and did, after winning the semi-state and knowing you're going to the Final Four, were you kind of almost semi-prepared for what you guys were going to go up against in the Final Four?
Well, we certainly knew about Marion, and I don't even know if they make this publication anymore, but one of the biggest days of basketball season was when that little magazine came out that previewed every team in the state.
Yep.
And I forget what that is called, but we certainly knew they had some good kids. It wasn't quite as obvious before the season Marion was going to be that great, because that would have been that group of three's sophomore year, so they had played freshman ball, I guess, the year before. But as the season went on, it became pretty clear that, they were the real deal. And also there was the whole big school, small school thing where, they were in that Central Indiana Conference, which was very good, playing at a school that had a storied history for a coach that had a storied history. So we definitely, kept our eyes on those guys. Now, to say we were prepared for how good they were before we got on the floor, that'd be hard to say, because they were extremely talented and something we had never played against before.
How did Coach Duncan get you guys prepared for that game?
So the day-to-day stuff was like every other game. We got our scouting report, which was maybe instead of 2 or 3 pages long, it was maybe 4 or 5 pages long. It had our defensive assignments. It broke down what each player liked to do. It was Coach Green, I believe, at the time up there. Was that right, Coach Green?
Yes.
He played kind of that matchup zone defense, which we had not played against, nor play against athletes that good. So we spent a lot of time talking about how we were going to prepare for that with our man-to-man offense, what things we could do to exploit it by rotating the ball. Those sorts of things. And, our JV and scout team did a good job emulating that. So, we stepped on the floor. We knew athletically they were going to be probably a little bit bigger and a little bit quicker, but I think we felt very prepared scheme-wise to, try and compete.
Todd, what was your feeling, or what was is it a blur now that you think back on it, but what was your first, do you remember the thoughts that were going through your mind, or how you felt when you guys took the floor to practice at Market Square Arena?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the things I still remember. So one of the first thing that was very cool was, the bus actually drove into Market Square Arena, and we got off inside, which was extremely cool. And then, coming out into the bright lights to the empty arena with just us there and, a few of the media people from Indy, I just remember kind of stopping, looking around at all the seats going, my gosh, this is, so I thought 2 things. This is crazy. And the second thing was, this must be what Hoosier hysteria is all about.
And so, tell us about the send-off. Was it a big send-off from your town? Did everybody come up to the Final Four when you guys played?
Oh, yeah. So we got a big send-off, and I don't know how they did this, but as we're driving up the roads up to Indianapolis, about every 10 miles there'd be a Southridge Raiders sign on the side of the road that someone had driven up the night before or whatever and put there. And I don't know what the ticket allocation was, but all I know is that the quarter of that stadium that was dedicated to Southridge was completely packed. And, I'm guessing that was about a 15,000, 16,000 seat stadium. There had to be 4,000 easily Southridge Raider fans there screaming their heads off when we started that game. So not a lot of people left in Huntingburg that night.
What were your nerves like before the game started?
I think, I don't remember exactly, but, definitely feeling more nervous, I think, before the tip because of the venue and the number of people than what we were going to do on the court. You get on the court, you play as hard as you can, and sort of you got to let the chips fall where they may. And it didn't work out for us. I think once we got out there, and honestly, I think early in that game, J. Edwards dunked on us. Once that happened, it's like, okay, we got to go play now. This is gonna, this is gonna get real ugly.
And what was the team's demeanor? What was Coach like? After that game, because you guys were so young.
Yeah, I think after that game, it was an eye-opener on how we had to improve to get better, because we started 5 juniors on that team, and we had everybody coming back, including our key subs. So we knew we were going to be pretty good next year, but also knew we had to get better as individuals and as a team to compete with those guys, because they were going to be back again too. They had 3 or 4 of their starters back. Coach Duncan after that game, I think, was very positive. There was no negativity at all, because I think we played as hard as we could play. Just didn't work out. And we came home, and I'm going to guess 2 weeks later we were playing baseball. That's just how it was.
Todd, did you have any idea? I mean, did you guys decide at that point in time after you lost that you wanted to come back and do it again? Did you have any idea you guys were going to do the same thing over again?
Well, I mean, I think we knew there was going to be a target on our backs. I think that in the summertime, certainly that spring, it was cool and people were talking about it. But then, as the season went on, it sort of went to the back of our minds. That summer we got back to work playing. We thought we had a shot, and we thought, Marion was going to stand in our way again. That football season, though, I broke my leg, and for me personally, that cast doubts on whether I'd be even able to play. So, when it ended up happening, it was very, very, gratifying. It was a great experience. But as far as in March or April, we knew we'd be good, but we knew we had to work.
Todd, when did you get on the radar for schools and scouting? And could you have played basketball somewhere? And why did you pick Indiana State? And what other schools were after you? And what is one school that you possibly would have went to rather than Indiana State to play football?
So as I remember, my junior year, I was a 6'2", 6'3" quarterback, and I could throw the ball pretty well. And, back in that day, that was a little bit uncommon. So, I was a big kid that could play quarterback. So I got on the radars of schools, mostly sort of the Indiana State side schools. I visited Indiana State, I visited Ball State, I visited Western Kentucky. The day after I played the game that I broke my leg, I was supposed to visit Northwestern. That was sort of the highest kind of look I ever got. Kind of in my mind, I said, all right, I have the size to be a quarterback at that level. In basketball, at my size, I was probably, at the same level at a, Division I or a low major level in basketball. I'd probably have to be a guard. And I could shoot the ball okay, but I just didn't feel that my ball handling was at a point that it needed to be able to succeed at that level. Because I've always been a center and a forward, growing up. And sort of, Coach Duncan came to me and he said, Todd, people are asking about you in basketball. What are you going to tell them? And I kind of told them early on that I wanted to go the football route. So that there was never any conflict with me, particularly after I knew that some of the bigger football schools or higher level football schools were interested.
Tell us a little bit about what funny stories out there. I've already interviewed Coach Duncan, so and I've gotten stories from Coach Joe Todrank from Bar Reeve. But what are some funny stories, or give us some funny stories about Coach Duncan? And did he ever do any somersaults for you guys?
Well, so I don't know if this is funny or not, but one of my earliest memories of Coach Duncan, and this set the tone for how we as middle school players viewed him. One of the earliest memories I have was he was wearing a pair of those 70s style, they're not boots, but they zipped up on the inside. They had very hard heels, and he had a penchant for when he'd get mad, he'd kind of stomp his feet real quick, one foot real quick. Well, there was one game when we were in middle school, that he got really mad and he stomped and put a hole in the floor of the basketball court. And we're like, holy cow. Let's not get him mad. So that was one story. Another story, he also liked to throw chalk, not at us, at chalkboards. And we had seen it a million times, and we were down at North Posey, and, that was a conference game. North Posey wasn't real strong, I guess, that year. I don't know if it was our junior, senior year, whichever it was. And at halftime, we were up by like 5, kind of coasting through this. And I believe we played North Posey in late January, where we needed to start getting ready for February in the sectionals. So we came in at halftime, and he's mad for some legitimate reason, I'm sure. And he takes a piece of chalk and throws it at the chalkboard, and it hit the chalkboard, and it did not shatter into pieces. It literally disintegrated it into a cloud of chalk. It was like an atomic bomb going off with the chalkboard. So needless to say, we came out in the second half and we smoked them because we didn't want any part of that. I guess the third thing, and this is maybe one of the coolest things that ever happened, after we beat L&M, we all ended up down at the truck stop that used to be at the corner of 231 and 64 about, 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know why we weren't home at that time and where curfew was, but we all ended up there. Coach Duncan had us all, happened to be there, and he bought us all breakfast that morning. So those are some of the kind of cool stories about him that, I remember, in addition to all the kind of day-to-day coaching and life stuff that, he taught all of us.
Todd, besides your home gym, what were some of the places that you, some of the teams that you would play? What were your biggest rivalries in high school, and what were the places that you really loved to play at? And also, what teams did you really like to win and you had to get out of there quick?
Well, certainly the biggest rivalry was Jasper-Southridge. There's no doubt that was the biggest rivalry game. They had before Southridge became Southridge, Jasper sort of had owned the Southridge or Huntingburg sectional. And, we grew up playing against those kids. Probably the best game I've ever been in my life was the senior sectional final against them. So by far, that was our biggest rivalry. I never felt like we had to get out of there quick because it was, I don't want to say friendship, but it was good competition. Certainly loved playing at the Hatchet House. No doubt about that. Quintessential Indiana high school gym. The one time we got to play at Robert Stadium was awesome. And I remember going to some of the places like North Posey not North Posey, I'm sorry, Northeast DuBois, small gym, packed, kids on the team that were talented but played aggressive, fans were right on top of you. Going down to, I guess it was Crawford County, that was sort of brutal. Those kids were tough, let you have it on the floor. Not so many fan-wise, but that was a tough place to play just mentally and physically to, keep control of yourself. And then the team that sort of had our number for a long time was Heritage Hills. They had some good players that seemed like they played very well against us. They had 2 big kids they put on the floor at the same time, had some good guards. So that was another tough game. I don't really remember anything where it's like, oh, we need to get out of here quick because the bus is going to get rocked or thrown eggs out or something like that. But definitely great rivalries and great places to play.
What was the difference between your guys' run to the Final Four your junior year, and was it about the same your senior year, or was there a point that you guys came together your senior year, or was it, give us a rundown about your senior year and getting back to the Final Four.
So for me personally, I didn't play like the first 11 games.
Right.
I'd broken my leg. That ended up being an opportunity for us because Ted O'Brien and Mike Hillsmeyer really stepped up and developed as players and gave us some much-needed depth there at the beginning of the year. And it's going to turn out that Ted, growing up, helped us tremendously win the sectional championship that year. What Coach Duncan ended up doing, and I'm not sure this was the right coaching move, but he made it, was more or less the day I was cleared to play, he put me back in the starting lineup. and he played me as much as he could. And if you watch those games, early on I was still limping a little bit, wasn't in shape, couldn't shoot. But basically he believed in me. He said, we're going to, this is our team. This is how we're going to win. You need to get ready to play, and, I'm sticking with you until you can. So that was, that helped me a ton. That year, I think we kind of rolled through January and February, except the last game of the season against Boonville, where Boonville came to our place. They were a very talented team that year. I think they were about 16-4. We were, I don't know, I'm going to guess we were about 20-1 or 19-1, having played a couple extra games in the Hall of Fame Classic. And they came in and they just dominated us on our home court and won by about 8. And, that was kind of an eye-opener heading into the sectional, where, we started to pick it up, play a little bit better. I think Coach inserted Ted O'Brien in the starting lineup at one point there late in the year to solidify things a little bit. And that leads to the sectional championship game against Jasper. So that year Jasper was probably 5-15, 6-14. Just a down year for them. Great program, bad year. They get on a roll, win the first 2 games in the sectional, and basically we're playing for the championship. The place is packed. Everybody sold their tickets to the Southridge and Jasper fans. Place is packed, going crazy. Both teams are shooting over 65%, and just shooting lights out. We get a little bit of a lead. They come back. They get a little bit of a lead. Finally, in the fourth quarter, we get up by about 5 points with about 3 minutes to go. They go on a comeback. They cut it to 1. And one of the biggest memories I have in high school is Ted O'Brien getting the ball on the low right block, shooting a turnaround jumper. And he's a righty, so his right hand's behind the backboard, shooting a turnaround jumper with about 45 seconds left, and it goes in. And I know as he's shooting it, I'm yelling, like, no, no. And it goes in. It's like, yes, yes. They come down. I think they miss. We get a rebound. Ted gets fouled, hits 2 free throws, and the game's over. After that game, we went into our locker room, and it's like, we knew then that was the greatest basketball game we'd ever played in. It was that well played. And we went over to Coach Duncan asked their coach if we could come over and just congratulate those guys on how well they played, because we'd played against each other for 12 years, same kids, and now it was done. So I remember going to their locker room, telling those guys what a great job they did, and they were very cordial, very friendly. It was a tough time for them; their careers were over. But that to me was that game, and after that game was what the Southridge sectional was all about.
And was it kind of like a rewind when was there something different that you guys did to kind of prepare to go back to Indy for your next Final Four?
I remember in the regional, we played okay. We got in foul trouble one game, and Ronnie and I had to end up playing guard, and they were pressing us, so that was sort of a nerve-wracking moment for me. We get to the regional, and the first game against Floyd Central, and they had the kid that ended up playing at IU, Pat Graham, played for them as a freshman. We ended up handling them, and then ended up playing Evansville Memorial in the semi-state championship game. And that game, interesting. Here's an interesting story. Coach Duncan always told us the best place to be at halftime is down by 1 point. That's where we want to be. If you're going to be behind by 1 point. So we're playing Memorial. We go in at halftime. We're ahead by 1 point. And I'm like, Coach always told us this is the spot we don't want to be in. But we came out and played better in the second half, held them off, and sort of it was on again. We were going to Indy. And what made that particularly gratifying was the beginning of that year, a writer from one of the Indy papers had made a comment about the season preview and said basically the Southridge Raiders would be watching the state finals from the cheap seats. So we walk into the gym, and Coach Duncan had arranged for that sports writer to be there to meet us, and we all got our picture taken, and we ribbed them a little bit. But, you know, we were back, and we were playing Marion again and ready to go.
And what was, you know, nerves again at the beginning of the game, or and also too what was the camaraderie like? I mean, was Marion respectful with you guys? I mean, was there, you know, no trash talk or anything else like that?
No, I mean, they were very respectful. There was no trash talk. Coach, I don't think their coach would let them do that, just like Coach Duncan wouldn't want us to do that. You know, it's not like it is now. I mean, we were basketball players. They probably had a little more talent, but there was no talking back and forth in any significant way. You know, the beginning of that game, you know, our game plan was to try and slow it down, get open shots. And it turned out we did that. We got open shots, and we couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. We were shooting with nobody on us by moving the ball, shooting layups, and just couldn't get it going in. And here's an interesting statistic about that game. And you might want to check this to make sure it's true, but I believe it still is. The first half of that game, I think we scored 8 points. It was like 23-8, something like that. The second half, we scored 53. And I think we hold the record in the same game for most points in one half and least points in one half. So, you know, we came out, we didn't play very well the first half. At that time, I remember vividly Coach Duncan and Coach Ransom talking. It's like, all right, boys, we got to go. We got to play. You know, this didn't work because we weren't shooting well. We just got to go out and play now. And we came out, we played better. You know, fundamentally, we just weren't athletic enough to stop them from scoring. You know, we had a very good defense, but they were just, you know, too talented with the ball and on the boards that we couldn't get enough stops. And even though we played much better in the second half, you know, we just couldn't make up the 15-point deficit or whatever it was we had.
So back-to-back Final Fours, and you're heading off to Indiana State University. Once you get to Indiana State University, do you think you made the right choice? And tell us a little bit about your football career at Indiana State.
Yeah, no, I thought I made the right choice. You know, you go from sort of, you know, being a good athlete to a situation where everyone's a really good athlete or even better. You know, I was the first person in my family to go to college, so just going to college was, you know, the right decision. I think a school like Indiana State gave me some opportunities, you know, academically and on the football field and the size of the school that I wouldn't have otherwise gotten. You know, I did very well in school there, which, you know, honestly probably allowed me to make Carnegie Mellon here and start to do my robotics career. So it was 100% the right decision. You know, now football-wise, you know, I was okay player. I was sort of the backup every year. You know, I started and played in a lot of games, got to do cool stuff like play at Florida Field, play at the Metrodome against the Gold Gophers, play at Iowa State, play at Kansas. We played in the Hoosier Dome against Ball State a couple times. So, you know, great experiences. You know, it was awesome to, you know, have your education paid for and you know, fly on a plane for the first time and all that kind of stuff. So no regrets whatsoever. And
if I'm not mistaken, you got to see Emmitt Smith play, right?
Yeah. So Emmitt Smith. So I have two stories about that. So yeah, we got to see Emmitt Smith play. It turns out we actually were I believe we were ahead of Florida 3-0 because we scored on our first drive.
That is
we basically
correct.
Pulled out all of our good plays, got a field goal, so we were leading them. And then basically they gave the ball to Emmitt Smith, and, you know, he torched us. Now, you know, we knew he was good at that point. You know, we didn't realize he was going to be a Hall of Fame NFL player. But many years later, when he was going to the Hall of Fame, I remember reading a Sports Illustrated article, and it listed Emmitt Smith's top career rushing games in college. And right there at, like, number 2 was Indiana State for, like, 230 yards. So that was a bad memory. Now, a good memory, and this was the last game I ever played. I started the game at Western Illinois, and we were a 500 team, and Western was about the same. But a guy by the name of Brian Cox played for Western Illinois, who ended up playing for 10 or 15 years in the NFL.
Right.
And perhaps the highlight athletically of my career was there was a rollout pass. No one was open. I put my foot in the ground, and I ran 85 yards, and I outran Brian Cox for a touchdown. So that was the other kind of moment against a future great player that I can remember.
And also, what was it like? Everybody wanted to be a high school star or even play college athletics, but you got your first touchdown pass at Iowa State. What was that like?
I was just trying to survive that game, honestly. I think I was a true freshman. That was our first road game. The starting quarterback went out with he was out. He got his knee torn up. He was out for the year. They put the backup in. He was getting pummeled. So essentially, to make sure the backup could play the rest of the year, I had to go in. And I just got crushed. I remember getting stitches on the sideline under my chin. They were just teeing off on us. And what ended up happening, they were beating us. They put their backups in, the kids that never play. But those kids knew they were never going to play again.
They were pumped up.
They just kept coming. Yeah, coming and coming. So, yeah, I don't really remember the touchdown that well. I just remember trying to survive.
Todd, so you go through Indiana State University. You have, you get your degree. What does Todd Jochem do afterwards? Do you get into coaching? Do you stay in Indiana? Give us a little bit of what you've done since you left Indiana State University.
So, kind of about my sophomore year at Indiana State, I'm like, I'm probably not going to be an NFL quarterback. So let's get that dream's gone. Okay, you kind of figure that out real quick. So I was in technology up there and had an interest in robotics. And, basically I said, look, I like this. I'm going to stay in school. I'm going to go to grad school somewhere. I got very good grades. I did well on the GRE and testing. And I applied to several schools, Michigan and Florida and Carnegie Mellon, and was fortunate enough to get into all of them. My fiance, my future wife, my wife now wanted us to go to Michigan because we had good friends from the football team that had moved there. But I got accepted to Carnegie Mellon, which is a really, really good school for computer science, and they had just started a robotics program. And it turned out on my application, while I didn't apply to robotics, I had put my interests were in the field of robotics. So the graduate admissions chairman saw that, and he pulled my application, said, hey, we have this new robotics program coming online. Would you like to come? And this was a phone call, all right? There was no internet, none of that stuff. And I said, well, let me think about it. And he said, okay, well, you can think about it. I'm leaving for Japan tomorrow, so you need to call me and let me know tomorrow before I leave. So I talked to mom and dad. I talked to my fiance. It's like, all right, we're going to do it. I called him. Ended up coming to Carnegie Mellon and almost immediately began work on developing self-driving cars. That research continued from 90 through 95, 96, 97, where we basically built a vehicle that drove from Washington, D.C. to San Diego, California, all but 50 miles of the trip. So it had sort of been on some groundbreaking work there. In 99, we had started two companies. At that point, we had left Carnegie Mellon to work on them full time. One to create a drowsy driver and lane departure warning system for heavy trucks, basically to keep truck drivers safe as they were driving. And then the other company did military robotics, basically how to make military robots smarter. Turned out, sort of in a sad situation, turned out the military robotics company was started at the right time because of 9/11 happening and a lot of money flowing into that sector. Over the next kind of 5 or 6 years, we grew those companies. In 2006, we sold the first one, the Drowsy Driver Warning System company, and in 2007, we sold the military robotics company. I had to stick around for a couple years as part of the retention agreement. But in 2009, kind of all the guys I had hired had left because the company culture was different. We were a company of 16 people that got bought by a company of 5,000, so a lot of things changed. So in 2009, I left and just started consulting and coaching my son in youth football. I've kind of kept up the consulting role in a limited fashion, kind of just doing that maybe once or twice a year. The football coaching has sort of expanded, where now, in 2011, I became the quarterback coach at our local high school. I've been doing that now for the past 6 years. We've had quite a bit of success here recently. Went to the state championship game a couple years ago. The kid I coach now, name's Phil Jerkovic, he committed to Notre Dame as a quarterback before his junior year.
Awesome.
So that's been awesome, and kind of we'll see how this goes, but this Saturday our team plays the back-to-back Ohio State champs on ESPN. So it's been a kind of a whirlwind ride here. My son now is a starter on the football team at strong safety, so it's really weird being a coach and then being a parent. I'm so nervous for him. It's much easier back when I played, but now, getting to watch him play and see all the hard work he put in is just, it's better than anything I ever did as an athlete, watching your kids play. So it's all good. My daughter's at Penn State now. She was kind of a state champ cheerleader here, and that was her passion. And then my younger son's in 8th grade, and he's sort of just the cool third kid that kind of gets away with murder, as the older kids say.
Well, Todd, it sounds like you didn't need to be an NFL quarterback.
No, I've been very fortunate, and I thank God for that all the time. That I had great mentors growing up, and I'm going to turn this back to high school basketball in Indiana. Coach Duncan was the best coach and mentor, and supplement to all the good parenting we got that any of us could have ever had. We were fortunate to play for him. And, the lessons he taught and our parents taught us and our community taught us, I think have made all of us very successful in life. And, now to be able to watch our kids and try and, instill some of the stuff that everyone taught us is and seeing them succeed has been just an awesome experience, an awesome life.
Todd, what do you think about the state of Indiana high school basketball today?
Well, I haven't followed it that much recently, but in my mind, as long as there's a class system, it's downhill from what it was when I played. I don't care that we lost twice in the state championship in a situation where if we played now, we would have won. I have no doubt about that. I learned more lessons in those two games about how you compete and how you use all your ability, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and you just got to go on with it. It's not the end of the world, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. And to the extent that in basketball anyway, forget the other sports, do what you want in the other sports, but in Indiana, in basketball, if you can somehow get back to a single class or a fewer class system or something that brings Hoosier hysteria back the way it used to be, I think that would be great. I guess Southridge and Jasper don't always play each other in the sectional, depending on what classes they might be in. That's a travesty. How can that be? It doesn't make sense to me.
Todd, I know that the old song "Glory Days" by Bruce Springsteen, but do you kind of think about those two back-to-back state championships quite often, and do they bring a smile to your face?
Certainly. Every March, I think about them. There's no doubt about it. And 100% a smile to my face. I don't, Rick, Ron, Ronnie, Andy, Mike Hillsmeyer, Tom Barnett, those guys, we haven't seen each other a lot. We follow each other on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. But that bond we had playing together never goes away. And, I just feel fortunate that I got to play in a single class system with great teammates, great coaching, great community, and experience that. Because the bottom line is kids now never will get to experience that again. And that's something I'll carry with me forever.
You guys have been listening to Keeping the Nostalgia Alive show. We've been joined by Todd Jochem for the hour. Todd, we ran a little bit long. I thank you for your time. Everybody is going to enjoy this, and once again, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for everything you do. I mean, I love watching all the posts and stuff on social media, and Indiana basketball always has a special place in my heart. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, you still there?